Good afternoon and thanks for watching THV 11 News at Noon. I'm Michael Laird. Breaking news here at noon, Governor Asa Hutchinson just moments ago announced the state is facing unprecedented times. Arkansas has no COVID ICU beds available right now. THV 11's Jordan Howington live at the state capitol with the very latest on this. Jordan.
Yeah, Michael, just weeks ago we were down to 6 COVID ICU beds, but now the state has hit rock bottom, which is very concerning. Around 50% of ICU beds are occupied by COVID-19 patients, which is causing much of that strain on our local hospitals. Governor Hutchinson says those hospitals are working quickly to open up more COVID ICU beds. He did clarify that ICU beds are still available for non-COVID patients, but right now they are working to secure staffing to be able to do that. And the governor says this shortage of COVID ICU beds is a stark reminder for Arkansans to get vaccinated.
The increased number of COVID patients that need that type of ICU care, those beds are full right now. I know our hospitals are trying to bring some additional online, but that is a cautionary note for everyone. And it should emphasize the need to get our vaccinations done.
The governor has spoken with the White House. He also wanted to reiterate that the COVID booster vaccine will not be available to the general public until September 20th. And that when that is available, people who are seeking that booster shot should wait 8 months until after their last COVID-19 shot. That is because they want to allow the time for antibodies to fall far enough to be boosted. Now tonight at 5 and 6, we'll have the latest COVID-19 numbers and much more from this meeting. For now, live in Little Rock, Jordan Howington, THV 11 News.
Now, weather from the First Arkansas Bank and Trust Weather Garden.
Well, out here in the THV 11 Weather Garden, seeing lots of sun, lots of blue sky, but it feels like I just walked into a greenhouse from the AC in the studio to yuck pretty much out here in downtown Little Rock, because it already feels like 100 degrees. With all the high temperatures and also with all the humidity, here's what it feels like around the region. It feels like 102 in Stuttgart. It feels like 112 in Camden. That's probably a little too high, but it feels like 108 in Searcy. I do buy that. And excessive heat warnings have been issued as close as Arkansas County, Prairie, Monroe counties, and down to southeast Arkansas. Heat advisory in effect for a large part of the natural state except northwest Arkansas, and that's because the heat indices will be 105 to as high as 110. Not too much in the form of cloud cover showing up here on visible satellite, and the temperatures already into the low to mid 90s, and it's only lunchtime. That tells you it is going to be a very hot day. Radar loop, it is quiet, and I think for the most part it's going to stay quiet. That boundary that we saw yesterday in northeast Arkansas has moved out of the state. So a very, very slim chance one county may see a stray shower. Temperatures today topping into the mid to upper 90s. I'll let you know if there's any heat relief coming up in my extended forecast a little bit later.
Nathan, thank you. Many employers and universities have started issuing ultimatums after the FDA gave full approval to the Pfizer vaccine for Americans 16 and up. That ultimatum, get the vaccine if you want to return in person. And for some Americans, a full approval was the confirmation they needed to finally roll up their sleeves. Here's David Begno.
It was the FDA's full approval of the Pfizer vaccine that convinced 19-year-old Kaylin McGee to line up at a vaccine clinic at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette yesterday and get vaccinated.
What did you think when you heard about the FDA approval?
I was just being ignorant at that point. Like, it was my own fault, so I just had to go do it. Like, there's really no running away from it anymore.
19-year-old Callie Roselle had also been on the fence about vaccination for months, but that finally changed yesterday.
Full approval from FDA is what did it for you?
Yes, it is. That's what did it for me. And it's going to be required on campus.
The FDA's full approval was swiftly met by several new vaccination mandates. The Pentagon is moving ahead with a vaccination requirement for all active duty service members. New York City Public Schools mandated at least one shot for all teachers and staff by September 27th. And United Airlines, which had already announced a vaccine mandate, says that its staff must be fully vaccinated by that same date. Scott Kirby is United CEO.
It seemed like an absolute no-brainer and a requirement from a safety perspective that we require vaccines. But I also believe that it's going to be more common to require vaccines than to not require vaccines within the next few weeks.
And while some people may challenge those mandates, don't expect a judge to overturn them, says CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
Historically, mandates work according to the law. That is, a government, a business, a university can demand that people get vaccinated. There were many people who felt that it did not have full approval and therefore it was risky to get it. That argument goes right out the door because with full approval, it is therefore looked at as a safe vaccine.
The full approval applies to those 16 and older. Experts say full approval for the younger kids probably will come this fall. The FDA says when you take a look at all the available data from Pfizer, it shows that Pfizer's vaccine is 91% effective at preventing COVID-19 disease. David Begnaud, CBS News, Lafayette, Louisiana.
The U.S. is also gearing up to administer COVID booster shots to all Americans 8 months after their second dose. You heard Jordan mention that a few minutes ago. That is set to start around September 20th. But Israel is already rolling out booster shots of the Pfizer vaccine to people there. And scientists say they're seeing results.
It seems to be increasing the protection of people receiving it by about 4-fold compared to people who just received 2 shots 5 or 6 months ago.
Health experts say it could take even more booster shots to eventually stop the virus. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is calling for a 2-month delay in booster shots so poorer nations can get their first dose of the vaccine. If you'd like to learn more about the vaccine or where to get one, grab your phone and text the word vaccine to 501-376-1111. We'll respond with a link to those resources. New at noon, investigators are looking into the deaths of an Arkansas native and her wife who were found dead in Utah. Crystal Turner of Hot Springs, who is on the right side of your screen there, and Kylan Schulte of Montana were found shot and killed at a campsite near Moab last week. Investigators have no suspect information at this time, but they do believe the women did not know their killer. Stay with THV11 and THV11.com as we continue to follow this story. Richard Barnett, the Northwest Arkansas man accused of stealing mail from Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's office during the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol, appeared in federal court today. He faces several charges, including obstruction and carrying a dangerous weapon. Barnett was released on bail but cannot travel more than 50 miles from his home in Gravette. We're going to have more from today's hearing tonight at 5 and 6. And attorneys for Josh Duggar have filed motions seeking to dismiss child pornography charges against him. Of course, Duggar appeared on the popular TLC show 19 Kids and Counting. The motions also ask for evidence to be suppressed, including all statements Duggar made to investigators, because his attorneys say that they took his cell phone before he could call those attorneys and question him without his lawyer present. Duggar, who pleaded not guilty, currently faces 2 charges of possessing child porn. He faces a maximum of 20 years in prison and fines up to $250,000 for each charge. Turning now to the crisis in Afghanistan, the U.S. and its allies have evacuated more than 20,000 people out of the country in the last 24 hours. But time is running out to make sure that every American and Afghan ally makes it safely out of the country. Skylar Henry has the very latest from the White House.
President Biden set the August 31st deadline for the U.S. to complete its withdrawal from Afghanistan. But there are still tens of thousands of Americans and Afghan allies still to be evacuated.
We are still driving towards the end of the month. That's where we are now. And if and when there's any change to that, we'll certainly, make it clear to the American people.
The president held a virtual meeting with G7 allies. Britain and France are among those pushing for more time to finish evacuating their citizens.
We have to plan on the 31st of August being the last moment. Every day we get after that would be a big bonus.
CBS News has confirmed that CIA Director William Burns met secretly in Kabul with the Taliban's de facto leader Abdul Ghani Bardar. A Taliban spokesperson told CBS News' Roxana Saberi that U.S. forces staying beyond the 31st would be a, quote, red line.
It is a violation violation of the commitment that President Biden has made.
The Taliban says it's no longer allowing Afghan citizens to go to the Kabul airport to try to leave the country.
We need to ensure that there is facilitated passage to the airport for American citizens, SIVs, third country nationals, and so forth. We'll continue those conversations with them. Ultimately, it will be the president's decision how this proceeds, no one else's.
The U.S. has stepped up the number of flights out of Kabul in an attempt to evacuate as many as possible ahead of the deadline. Skyler Henry, CBS News, the White House.
In fact, the Pentagon says about one flight is leaving out of Kabul every 45 minutes. The U.S. has also designated 4 different military bases in the U.S. to house evacuees once they reach America. We just heard from Governor Hutchinson. He says right now bases in Arkansas are not on that list, but he says they are being considered for possible overflow.